everyone. Welcome to another Ashram Talks discussion. Today we're going to explore a really relevant topic with Chandramukhi, who is joining us again from Australia. Welcome, Chandramukhi. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Very happy to be here again.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you on too. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can kind of avoid being pulled in so many different directions by our thoughts, our emotions, the world around us, and maybe just navigate life with kind of a little bit more guidance, balance. I don't know if you would say that's kind of a good summary or intro to what we're going to discuss today in the verse.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. That's what we're going to be looking at, how our senses are drawing us in all directions. And are we being controlled by the senses, or are we controlling the senses, and how we can live our life more consciously?
Wow. Yeah, that's such an important question. And I think it's so important for all of us to have kind of a better understanding of that. And, for those of you who don't know Chandramukhi, Chandramukhi is an educator for children. She's also a parent and she's a lifelong Bhakti Yoga practitioner. So I love how you kind of, navigate all of these topics through the lens of your own valuable life experience. I think that enriches things a lot. So we're really excited to hear from you. Thanks for being here again. Yeah, whenever you're ready, we can get started for today.
Okay, yes. Well, I'm really looking forward to today's topic. It's very practical. And we'll be discussing how the Bhagavad Gita guides us to withdraw our attention from constantly getting stimulated from this and that and the outside, and gather our senses with the mind and intelligence to, withdraw it from being scattered, but to actually focus in within and uh, control our mind, control our senses so that we're going in a direction that is positive and conscious without just being pulled here and there. So, first of all, as we do always, I'll say my auspicious invocation, my Mangala Charana, unto the lotus feet of all of our spiritual teachers, divine masters, praying for their mercy and guidance today so that we can unpack and unravel the inspiration in this next verse that Krishna is describing in the Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shishimai Bhaktivedanta Narayaniti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I'm offering my obeisances, like offering of flowers, my heart at the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Pravista Om Vishnupad Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto the lotus feet of Nityalila Pravista Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all of our illustrious teachers in our divine lineage of bhakti, and praying for their mercy and guidance today, and offering my pranams, obeisances, my welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us again, whether you're listening now, whether you're listening later on. It's very, very nice to have you here. And I can see Colleen is here again already. Hi, Colleen. Thank you for joining us again. You're our most regular attendee, and it's so nice to see you. Although I can't see you, but I can see that you're there. So today's verse, let's move to today's verse, and we're in chapter 4, and we are up to verse 27. And as you've already heard, this chapter is all about the yoga of transcendental knowledge. So let's dive in and read the verse for today. Sarva indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyama yogyakno jovati jnana dipite. Those who are interested in self-realization, in terms of mind and sense control, offer the functions of all the senses, as well as the vital force, breath, as oblations into the fire of the uncontrolled mind. So this verse is coming in a series of verses where Krishna is describing to Arjuna the different types of yajna or sacrifice that one can engage in for self-realization. And as we know, as we've heard before, the Bhagavad Gita is covering all the different Vedic systems that are there for different varieties of people, different walks of life, different adhikars, or that's like eligibilities, and different ways. And then ultimately he's guiding us to the essence, which slowly through the Gita, Krishna brings us through to the essence. And in this verse, he's specifically covering the yoga system and is referring to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, where the whole process is described of bringing the mind under control, bringing the senses under the control, actually the senses under the control of the purified mind. And by that process, offering the senses in the fire of the mind, or the yajna, the sacrifice of the mind, and then offering that to the Lord. And he's not going into so much detail with it. He's just giving a very summary. And if we look at the different processes in that yoga system, one of them, the first one is yama, or restraints, ethical disciplines, and the next one is observances, or positive. There's things that you should give up, and then things that you should adopt in your life, basically. So there's yam, niyam, so things to give up, things to adopt. Asana, various sitting postures, as this is very prominent in today's society. Yoga is very well known as the yoga that you do for exercise to keep the mind and body healthy, but that's actually only one of the limbs of that yoga. Then there's pranayam, regulation of the expansion or of the life force, the breath. So we actually have, and this verse is specifically focusing on this also, the life airs that are inside the body, and how to regulate them so that your mind is under control. Pratyahara is withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Dharana, concentration of your mind, and then that becomes meditation and ultimately entering into samadhi. So in the bhakti tradition, I shouldn't just say samadhi, I should say what that is in English, which is the complete absorption in who you are as a spiritual being, realizing your identity as a spirit soul, part and parcel of God. So that particular yoga system was practiced for many thousands of years, and it's still practiced today, but it's actually very hard to do in Kali Yuga. And our teachers, when they comment on these verses, they describe an easy method, which is Sankirtan Yajna, or chanting the holy names of God. And that actually guides one into this process very easily, into ultimately reaching samadhi, which is full realization of who you are. So if we look at this verse, then how it relates practically in our life, there's actually so many teachings within it, and we can question ourselves that are we being, and that's the title of our talk today, who's really in control, you or your senses? And then we kind of dive deeper into seeing, well, who are you, and what are our senses? What does that mean? And what does it mean to control the senses? Why would we want to control our senses? And this verse is describing bringing the senses under the control of the offering the functions of the senses and of the life breath as oblations in the fire of the controlled mind. So that's something to really contemplate. What does that mean? the fire of the controlled mind. So we've been talking about yagya, and I know one of my classes that I gave back in chapter 3, we described yagya as being like spiritual ecology, and how it's all about living in harmony with the universe. And actually, the universe is functioning on this system of giving, receiving, and offering back, and that sustains everything. And how our life works in harmony when we cooperate with the greater system that sustains us. And it's like this yagya is about seeing that everything actually is part of God. I am part of God. Everything I'm given is given to, everything in my life is given to me, actually. We think that this is mine, this is my house, this is my car, this is my country. But before we were born, we didn't have that identification. We were in some other body with a different idea of who I was and where I was. And when we take birth in this life and all our different lifetimes, everything we have is given to us. It is actually belonging to God. It's actually belonging to the divine. And when we offer everything back, rather than trying to use it separately for my own sense enjoyment, then there is harmony. And that is what yagya is, as we've been describing in these verses, making our life as an offering and a source of connection with divinity and a source of self-realization, making our ordinary life in everything we do a means for self-realization, for realizing that I am spirit, I am a part and parcel of God, and for connecting in everything we do, connecting with divinity with everything we do. So if we look then, this verse is describing bringing the senses and offering those functions into the fire or the yagya of the controlled mind. So that offering is then very, very important, that the mind, if our mind is here and there, whatever we do won't be an offering. But if our mind is brought under control, then we can live consciously. We can make everything in our life an offering and a source of connection with divinity. So let's look at the nature of the mind and how our mind works. And then we can see, well, we can understand more. Now, generally, in today's society, most of us think we are our mind, and it's actually difficult to distinguish between them. Our senses we can understand because we can see them by our eyes. They're perceptive. Sorry, what's the word? We can perceive them with our senses. We can perceive them with our eyes. We can see them. So we have 5, according to the Vedic system, we have 5 working senses, and that's obviously taste, touch, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our hands, and then we actually have and our sense of smell, and then we also have our knowledge acquiring senses, where it's like the input that what we see. So everything that we can see, taste, touch, it goes in through our different senses. So we're interacting with the world, and everything in our life is always pulling us to interact with the world through our senses and to enjoy, because when we are in that mode of forgetting our service mood to God and our natural nature, then we think that our natural nature is to enjoy. So, for example, our phones, so many things distracting us. Our phones is the biggest one these days. Our phones, notifications, messages. We get a dopamine effect from checking them every day and every minute or throughout the day. There's advertising that's bombarding us. There's entertainment, the promise of entertainment. There's so many foods. We have impulsive needs to taste, to hear, to see, to touch, to smell, and when you think about it, how much of our day is actually truly chosen, like we are, or is it just that we're letting ourselves getting pulled in this direction, that direction, this direction? And often we think we're making conscious choices, but the Gita is asking us whether we're actually directing our lives, or whether we're simply reacting to our senses and our conditioning. And this is quite a powerful concept to think about. So our senses, they actually work as really good servants, but then they're poor masters. They're not good masters. If we let our senses be our master, we'll be pulled in all different directions. But senses are actually designed to be like a servant of us inside, and and then we can, you know, see further who is us. And the Bhagavad Gita in earlier chapters gives a analogy of the Krishna gives the analogy of the chariot and the horses driving the chariot. And we've heard this in many classes, I'm sure. I know, I think I've even spoken in the previous class. But the horses are likened to the senses. The reins of the horses are likened to the mind. The driver is the intelligence, and the passenger, being seated, carrying along this in this body, is a soul. That's who we really are. So the mind has. So where is the mind? That we know the senses are in our physical body, gross body, but the mind is situated at the center of all the senses. So you can imagine, you can understand this. Actually, it's only another mind can perceive a mind. It's not something you can see. But we can understand that the mind is at the center of all the senses. When if I give you something that will stimulate your senses, your mind will automatically go there. So if I give you a red rose, for example, then your mind will go there, or whatever it is. So mind is situated there, and our mind's function is thinking, feeling, and willing. So so there's the feeling part, where that's where our feelings operate, and according to how we interact in the world, we'll feel certain emotions, and we might be angry at something, or we might be sad or happy. All these different emotions play in the mind. And then there's the the thinking factor. So what you contemplate and think about, and wish, and it's, it stimulates your desires of what you want and what you don't want. And the mind basically accepts and rejects things. I want this, I don't want that. And then based on what we've experienced in our past, we realize that, oh, I had a bad experience there, so I don't want that. And then I want this, want that. And they're kind of like, so through our senses, our mind is experiencing the world, and our mind is thinking, feeling, and then willing. So then we make decisions, and we will to do things. But behind, and one way we can check that we're not the mind is we can say, my mind, right? Oh, my mind is disturbed today, or our mind goes after an ice cream, but we know that it's winter, and if I take that ice cream, I probably won't be able to eat my dinner or something. Or, this is when you're older anyway, kids, doesn't matter. But, so it's like your mind, you can see that, you can observe. And that's one thing yoga teaches, is whether it's your physical asanas yoga, or whether it's the yoga of action, whether it's yoga involving meditation. Yoga teaches you, part of the process is to observe your mind, rather than being at one with your mind. And so you can actually observe when you actually take a step back, and you can actually see, oh yeah, I actually not my mind. But then we identify with it all the time. We identify with our emotions, with our anger, with our senses, and our senses are pulling us here and there. So behind the mind, is the driver, or of the intelligence. Okay, so the analogy of the chariot comes in there, where the intelligence needs to take the reins of the mind, which are attached to the senses, which are connected to the senses, and guide it. And so the two functions of the intelligence are discrimination and control of the mind. So then it's up to our intelligence to discriminate, to guide our feelings, or to guide our desires, guide what we want, and it's so it's just discrimination. So for example, the discriminating factor behind your mind wanting that ice cream is, just for an example, so many examples. The intelligence thinks, oh well, actually no, I probably shouldn't have that, or no, it's okay, it's a hot day, I'll have it, or so there's intelligence is functioning to guide the mind. And behind that, so the mind and intelligence, we're even not our intelligence. So we can even say my intelligence. Who's me? I'm the soul inside the body, inside this vehicle. And the part of the vehicle is our gross body, but we also have the mind and intelligence. And so we use our intelligence to guide the mind, then we we're we can live more consciously instead of being dragged here and dragged there. We can also have a better concept of ourselves, because sometimes we can get really angry at things and then we realize later, oh, why did I get so angry? We can let our anger go out of control, for example. This is an example. But then if we can see that, separate ourselves from our mind and intelligence, and we can actually see, oh, that was my mind going off and I have to bring it back. And we don't have to put ourselves down that, oh gosh, I am such a bad person, for example. So our mind it's naturally, sorry, it's I'm going to say unnaturally uncontrolled. It's uncontrolled when it's just running after the senses. And in one sense, that's a natural thing for being in this world as a conditioned soul, but it's not natural to the soul. That's what I was trying to say. So the intelligence, we need to use purify our intelligence and draw the senses in and offer that into the controlled mind. And then one of God's names is Rishikesh, which means he's the master of the senses. So our controlled mind then becomes like a fire in yajna, offering to God. And so rather than letting our mind follow the senses to enjoy separately all the time from our real spiritual interest, our real eternal interest, but it becomes like an offering. So bringing our mind under the control of the purified intelligence and offering those senses into that fire, which is a really beautiful analogy. And if it's not like that, another analogy that I've heard once before, identifying with our mind as us and running off with whatever our senses want, doing whatever we feel at any time, can be likened to a person taking a dog for a walk and identifying with the dog. So for example, if you can imagine you misidentify yourself that you're just like the dog, and every time the dog stops to smell someone else's stool, for example, and the person kneels down and smells it too. Every time the dog barks at someone and threatens to bite that person, the foolish person who's a slave to his mind immediately releases the dog and from the leash and allows it to maul the other person. So that's the condition, actually. Like if we're just following our senses and letting our minds just follow our senses, we can do all kinds of things that are not favorable for our real welfare. So when we're fully identified with the whims of the mind, then we're not acting consciously, and that's when we're reacting here and there to everything rather than focusing consciously. So the Gita shows us and guides us that self-realization means remembering who we really are. We actually already are, not becoming something else, but actually remembering who we already are. That we're not the body, that we're not the mind, and we're not the emotions even, which is part of the mind, but we are conscious being beyond this. We are spirit soul. Spirit soul is eternal, full of consciousness and full of natural bliss in connection with God, part and parcel of this divine person. And our natural function, our eternal function, is loving service and connection with the Supreme Being. And so when we can learn to guide our senses with the intelligence, we can live consciously. So if we live without that self-control, then our desires just multiply, our distractions increase, our mind becomes scattered, and our peace just starts to is dissipated. There's no peace, and we think as a condition in our state of forgetfulness of who we are. We think that freedom is to do whatever we like, but actually it's the opposite. Freedom is not being controlled by every feeling that arises. It's, seeing the feelings that come or the desires that come, not having to react, but being that conscious person behind, and being, rather than being automatic and emotional, reacting, but actually having a different response to being conscious, being thoughtful, being intentional in what we do. And so that we're creating a space between ourselves and everything around us, so that we stop and be conscious rather than let our minds be taken away. So our energy then, our energy, our vital force, as described in this verse, the life airs that make our body run. We're spending our energy through on a daily basis, through what we see, through what we hear, what we talk about, by worrying, by consuming this and that. But yoga is about bringing that bringing the senses and the mind under control, so that we can focus our attention, focus inward, and reconnect with ourself and the higher self, the higher being. And so we'll think about, just to finish off, we'll just think about some practical applications of this. So one of the things we could do is we could maybe just find some things in the day where we just contemplate some things in the day where our mind is more in control than us. So what is one area or some areas of my life where my senses are driving me instead of me driving them? So for example, it could be our phone. So maybe we could try, well, before we pick up our phone, pause, stop, and just think about it. Is this helping me? Is it aligned with who I want to become, my true purpose? And how can I make this action an offering or a means of connecting with the Lord? How can we do that with our phone? Okay, something else. When somebody says something to us, pause. Don't react straight away. And there's things we can work on, whatever situation is in our lives that's really pressing us right now. It might be reacting to what somebody says to us. So pause and think about it. Is this helpful? Is what I'm going to say helpful? Is it respectful? Is it kind? So there's so many different ways we can approach our life, but if we can just find starting with some of them, we can. That's one thing we can do. Pause and see, before I do anything, what's my intention, and take a breath. Even taking a breath can help us stop and pause and be in the moment. And then for those who are already practicing this bhakti path and maybe chanting every day, doing some mantras, you can also start to think, well, how can I improve my focus in my chanting? How can I improve my focus in my daily activities? And so if our mind, it can be guided. You might have heard that Aesop's fable where I think it's the crow and the wolf. The crow has a piece of food in its mouth, or maybe it's the fox, and the fox comes up to it and says, "Oh, you sing so beautifully, crow," because the fox is thinking it wants the food that's in the crow's mouth, but the crow's not going to give it to him. So the fox says to the crow, "Oh, crow, you sing so beautifully. You should let me hear your singing." So he's very tricky. And of course, the crow thinks, "Oh, yes, I'm a good singer." And he starts singing, and the food drops out of its mouth, and then the fox runs off with it. So, in a way, our mind is very tricky, but it can be guided. and we can trick the mind. We can trick the mind into thinking of higher thoughts. So if we're chanting mantras, for example, or whatever we're doing in our life, we can guide our mind to contemplate higher things. And especially through, as we talked about in my last class, use of mantras to guide the mind that that help one focus. But like, you just think about it, right? When we practice guided meditations, the person who's leading the guided meditation will guide us to sitting in our favorite place, and there might be the ocean there, the sky is there. So our mind can be guided, and it can be guided into concentration, and it's this concentration that Krishna is guiding us to, but connecting it with God, connecting with Krishna. And beginning stages of that is connecting with God, that He is everywhere. He is inside and outside everything. He's my nearest and dearest friend. I am surrounded by that divine being at every moment. That divine being loves me so much. He is with me, and He cares for me. And every living being is in the same position. Every living entity is fully embraced by God at every moment, but we forget it. And that by and then we start contemplating things like this, instead of letting our mind go, oh yes, I want this and I want that, and I don't have this and I don't have that, and letting our senses direct our life. No, take it back. Bring back the control of where we're going and what we're doing. Or it might be that, we can read in these beautiful descriptions of Krishna in the Vedic literatures, especially Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures, that describing the beauty and sweetness of Krishna. So, for example, there's one verse describing God and what He looks like, and that's the beauty of the Krishna concept of God. Is just, there's so many descriptions of who is God, what is He doing, what is His personality. Because when we want to get to know someone, we want to know about them and what they do, and when he is in His role as God, as maintainer, as creator, maintainer, and destroyer. That's what's God, generator, operator, destroyer. He is in that aspect of looking after everything in this world through His different incarnations and energies and so forth, the demigods and the whole universe is working under His will. But then when He is playing in His personal abode, He is described as so beautiful and sweet. So, for example, I'll just read a beautiful verse from the Bhagavad Gita. His crown is decorated with a peacock feather, and His forehead is marked with a tilak of musk. His earrings are fish-shaped, and they swing upon His cheeks, kissing His cheeks. His eyes resemble a lotus. His neck resembles a conch. His face is graced with a gentle smile. And those that are meditating, so just stepping out from reading, those that are meditating in this way can bring the mind to His lotus feet, knowing that when He smiles, He's smiling at me. He is there, right? He has such a beautiful, sweet smile. A Venu means flute. A Venu flute rests upon His lips. His complexion is darkish. He is supremely peaceful, and He stands in a threefold bending posture. His cloth resembles the rays of the sun, and He is adorned with a Vaijayanti garland. I worship that supreme absolute truth, who is always situated in Sri Vrindavan, His eternal abode, surrounded by hundreds of young maidens and dressed in the attire of a cowherd boy. So these different, there's so many different ways we can guide our mind into contemplation and withdrawing our tendency to always follow after whatever our senses want, but bringing that mind under control of meditation, so that then it becomes an offering, and then our whole life becomes purified. We become free from all the reactions of our actions, free from our karma, and move toward upliftment of our consciousness, towards spiritual bliss and happiness, realizing who we are and being happy forever. And I'll just finish off with one little verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the Queen Kunti describes, she's she's praying to Krishna, praying to the Lord. And she says in her prayer, just trying to find it here, where's it gone? So, and one thing I wanted to say is one of Krishna's names is Manamohan, which means enchanter of the mind. Mana means mind. Just like in the word mantra, mantra is that which controls the mind. So man means mind, and Manmohan, it means he enchants the mind. And so ultimately, through our practice, we want to be enchanted by Krishna and fall in love with God. And then automatically our mind will go there. And Queen Kunti says, oh Lord, as the Ganges River flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. And so ultimately the goal of yoga is for this to happen. For initially it's a practice, and we have to try and forcibly bring the mind under control. But eventually our soul will be so enlivened, because the natural nature of the soul is to fall in love with Krishna and automatically be controlled. And so when we engage in Bhakti Yoga or devotion, acts of devotion for Krishna, then it's like telling your mind to go east, and you automatically don't go west. So you automatically don't engage in sense enjoyment. You automatically engage in connecting and serving God. And so that's a gradual process, but that is who Krishna is, Manmohan, the enchanter of the mind. So I'll finish there, and if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them.
Wow, thank you so much, Chandramukhi. Speaking of the mind, I feel like this class blew my mind. There's actually a lot that's coming to mind. Now I keep saying mind, right? There's a lot that's coming to mind, a lot of questions that I have, but I guess just to share a comment from Colleen, a really nice reflection. She said, everything we are given to offer it back to Krishna, remembering who we really are, thinking, feeling, willing. Thank you, Chandramukhi, for these gifts. I agree. These are definitely gifts, everything that you shared today. And Colleen also shared that she's joining us in the UK and that it's 1 a.m., but she says it's totally worth it for her to stay up for this discussion. So, wow, thank you so much, Colleen, and we're really grateful to have you here too, and everyone who joins us. Chandramukhi, again, there's a lot that I want to ask, but even as you're saying this, like, to be honest, I do notice all the time I'm either listening to a class or I'm, trying to do some mantra meditation, and all of a sudden I'll realize, like, wow, my mind is somewhere completely different, like different situation, different context, different day. Like, I'm all of a sudden just thinking about something totally separate from where I am. And so, yeah, like, I guess when that happens, like you said, we can try to just, redirect the mind and, reel it back a little bit. But is there a way that we can, just kind of develop or train our mind to just, I don't know, focus a little bit more so that we're not constantly redirecting?
I think that in the initial stages, like, most of us are, it's going to be like that. That's what the mind does. Like, even Arjuna says it later in the Gita, or maybe it's a verse we've read, I'm not sure, but the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. And so it's going to take practice in the initial stages until we awaken. Our faith becomes more based on taste, prominently, rather than it's natural. But I think that if we make our daily practice a routine, then we're going to be going on the path of making that easier. And so if we bring specifically in this age, it's recommended the Bhakti Yoga path of yoga, which is the easiest path, because in this day and age, our minds are more bombarded than ever, and I'm sure we could all agree. Even now, like just in the last 50 years, it's the information age. We're just constantly bombarded, and all the screens that we have are taking away from ourselves, and like there's so much to take, so much we have to do, so much that we cram into our lives. So the easiest way that is recommended in the Vedic scriptures is Krishna Varanam Akrishnam Sango Pangascha Parshadam. where it's describing that those in this age engage in Sankirtan Yagya, which is engaging the mouth in singing God's names and repeating God's names as a mantra meditation over and over, or as in kirtan with others. And then the mind becomes cleansed. The mind becomes cleansed, the heart becomes cleansed, our desires become purified in a very easy way, and we don't have to think about it too much. And then when we actually can engage in some mantra meditation every day, then our mind becomes gradually purified. We can start with 5 minutes, then increase it to 10 minutes, then increase it to half an hour, and then do that every morning, do that every night, do it in the middle of the day, and then gradually do that wherever we are. Then our mind becomes more. But the interesting thing is, there's this very scientific way, and I think I have described this before. It's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. Smaranam is remembrance, where your mind is. Shravanam is hearing. Kirtan is mantra meditation. So when we hear about the absolute truth every day, and then we speak about it, or we sing about it, the absolute truth every day, then our mind will be situated in the absolute truth. We do this every day with everything. We hear about what's on the news. We might hear about someone having a baby, or having this thing going on in the mundane world, like this, and then we speak about it to someone else. Oh, did you know that such and such, had this happen to them? And we're engaging in hearing and chanting all day about material things, and then we're always thinking about them. And so then the Vedic literatures are guiding us to do the same thing, but do it in relation to Krishna. And the more we're hearing and the more we're speaking and singing and then the meditation comes. And so, yeah, it's daily practice. And I think the more we do it, the easier it gets. And I'm definitely still in the practice stage. I'm not, but eventually we will awaken. Who we are will start to awaken, and it'll become automatic, more and more automatic, until eventually it's just our focus is in divinity and not in the mundane. So yeah, the work in progress. But I think is that helpful?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. And when you like flip it like that, right? Like we might think like, oh, this ideal, like if I just listen about Krishna, but when you flip it around like that and think like, yeah, we are hearing these things every day in the media, and then we're talking about them, and then that just becomes ingrained into like our culture, what we care about, what we think about. And like what you said, when you turn it around like that, it's like we really see how that's a process that happens, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I know one of our great teachers, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to publish a magazine or a newspaper about the transcendental world, about the spiritual life and teachings. He had a weekly one, a fortnightly one, and a monthly one. And he said, there's so much news from the spiritual world that you can absorb yourself in.
Wow.
And it's not just about all becoming withdrawing the senses and trying to control them. It's about engaging them in giving the mind something to taste and something to contemplate. So yeah, and it depends how sincere we are. And if we really think, yeah, I really can't get my joy just in my mundane life, I need this, then we're going to try. And it's possible, because we are parts and parcel of God, and that's our real nature, but we've just forgotten that. And so we just remind ourselves every day, right? And each other. That's why if we be around as much as we can those who are on the similar path, help each other,
Yeah, definitely. And something that we've been talked about in our last class, 2 classes ago, with, Chandramukhi Dasi, who joined us as a guest, people were on there saying like, there are no other, spiritual practitioners or no other devotees in my city, what should I do? A lot of people were asking that, and people shared that in our survey too. And I mean, there are probably many different answers, but I think what you're saying too, like even looking for these opportunities, like Colleen, who is joining us at 1 a.m. because this is an opportunity for us to connect, right? And I guess, yeah, maybe utilizing the internet as a tool too, to find other ways to connect, engage. We have access to so much, so many books even, on the internet as well. Yeah, because we might feel like that too, right? Like maybe we want to find these opportunities, but maybe they're not, like in our immediate area.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard, but at the same time, like you say, the internet and the availability to connect online or whatever makes it very helpful. But also Krishna's with us, and we're in our situation wherever we are by the will of the Lord and by our own karma, our own journey. And I think sometimes it's hard to forget, hard to remember that we're actually meant to be where we are right now. And that's just where we're meant to be, wherever it is in the world. And how, if we've come across this knowledge and there's no one else around, well, how fortunate. It's like you find a treasure and wow, I've got this treasure. And then maybe it could be that, well, Lord, who else knows about this? Pray about it. There's so many people out there. It might not be obvious that they might not be, obviously following the same path, but there's so many people who are following things because they're diving deeper into themselves and wanting to find things. And so Krishna can connect, God can connect us with others if we just ask to. And, and then there's people out there that we might not have realized that are there. So I think connecting with others is really important. And that happens by the will of God, really. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that describes that people are brought together like logs on a river, and sometimes when they float together and then sometimes they float apart. So I think if we're, like Srila Maharaj says, we're with sincerity to safety, if we're really keen to learn more, to be with others, then the Lord will provide. Or maybe we can make trips somewhere. I know Shamarani Didi has a beautiful temple in Florida, and she has so many people come to stay there, and there's others around everywhere, all over the world. We can find those that resonate with us and make a trip to India and then come back, and so many ways. But the Lord has our best wishes in mind, and we are right where we are because of a particular reason, and that's meant to be for us, I think. And that's just, got to connect with the Lord and to guide us through everything.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's an incredible response to that. And I love that your outlook is always so positive, right? Like sometimes, again, we can think like, oh, this process is so challenging, and like maybe after a million lifetimes, which is also true. But I think you also really share this positive outlook. Like the tools are there, everything that we need is there. Like there are things we can do right now, and Krishna's with us. And we need to hear that too. So that's something that I really appreciate about your classes, that you're consistently sharing that. And it's such an important reminder.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's we have to stay positive. My spiritual master would say, always be hopeful. Don't be hopeless. You can be helpless, but don't be hopeless. Like helpless as in, my Lord, I need you. But don't be hopeless, he would always say.
Yeah, and Hare Krishna, Rob is saying Hare Krishna, Rob Ellings.
Hare
Thank you for
Krishna.
joining us. Yeah, okay, I'm going to write that down. Always be hopeful, don't be hopeless. I'm going to write that down right now. And speaking of tools and engaging and connecting, we have a lot of different ways that you can connect beyond these classes. We have a new WhatsApp community space. You can find the link in our YouTube bio or messages for it, but it's basically a space. We'll give some announcements. If you have questions for our speakers after this class, you can put them in there, and we'll get them to our speakers. And it's a great way to connect with others who are interested in these topics too. You can also engage with us on Instagram, Ashram Talks ENG, like English, Ashram Talks ENG, and message us any questions there. And so again, thank you again to everyone who joined us, and we're live every Monday at 7:30 p.m. and Thursdays 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And thank you again, Chandramukhi, for joining us today, and for kind of your authenticity and your sincerity and enthusiasm always. It's really helpful to me, and I think that it's helpful to all of our listeners and everyone who's part of Ashram Talks.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
All right, Hare Krishna. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you Thursday at 8 a.m. to continue Chapter 4.